Hello, hello. It's a pleasure to be here, and today I want to talk about sustainability. And when you think about sustainability, you usually think about the earth in green, in rivers and skies that are blue. But this idea called the Sustainocene says you can't have blue skies and green unless you worry about one other thing too, not the earth and the environment, but you have to worry about people. And what this says is you can't have a sustainable earth if you have poverty in the world. And so if you don't take care of poverty, I claim you can't have a sustainable planet, and you shouldn't even worry about the earth. Now, the reason for that starts here, and this is what makes the problem difficult. It's this philosophical concept called solipsism. So what solipsism is right now, none of you exist. You only exist because in my mind, I allow you to exist. So if I decide you don't exist right now, the room is empty. And that's how we treat energy, because we only do energy for the world that we see, and the world that we see has 3 billion people in it, people like us, the haves. We live in a developed world. The problem is the people we can't see, 6 billion, are poor, and they have no access to energy. So currently there are 3 billion people in the world with no access to energy. As I speak to you, 1.6 billion people have never seen an electron in a wire. And the other 1.5 billion people are low energy users. And in the next 40 years, 3 billion more people are going to be born on the face of the planet, and they're not ending up in the yellow circle, the world that we know. They're being born into the poor parts of the world. And so we would like to take care of that problem. One is a moral imperative. Most people say we should take care of the poor. We don't really help the poor, we just say it, but at least we believe it in our hearts. But the other is pragmatic, and the pragmatic part is that, and this relates back to the Sustainocene, if you don't take care of the poor, you can't have a sustainable planet. Now, that is a concept. I'm a scientist, and so scientists always ruin nice concepts with equations. So I'm going to show you an equation. That equation describes energy use. So if I know population, if I know GDP, gross domestic product per person, the wealth of a country per person, and then I know this thing called energy intensity, which is how much energy does it take to grow my economy, my GDP. If I know those 3 terms, I can calculate world energy use. And I did that around 10 years ago. In 2012, you were using 16 terawatt equivalents of energy. So the way to think about that is the world in 2012 had a light bulb that was 16 trillion watt light bulb. It's on all the time, and you have to give it energy. And you give it mostly coal, oil, and gas to keep the light bulb on, the 16 trillion watt light bulb on. In 2050, you're going to need 16 terawatt more equivalents of energy. You're going to have a 32 trillion watt light bulb that's on. But when I did that calculation, I assumed that every bit of energy you use today, you'll save in the future. So I made the assumption you're going to save 16 terawatts, but you need 16 more, and you could say, why? Because you're all going to be good people. You're going to save all the energy for me for the future. And it's still not enough. And it's because of these 6 billion more people who will be born. They need energy. And when you put them in that equation, you find out you're going to double your energy use. And what I'll argue right now is that energy, and I call it non-legacy, because they haven't inherited an energy system. You have here, because there are wires in the ground, and the buildings all have a grid associated with it. But for the poor parts of the world, they haven't made that investment yet. And I'm going to argue it needs to be distributed, available to everybody, and low capital expenditure. And that means no complicated engineering. And the reason for that is here. A Boeing 777, I just said, how much does it weigh and how much did it cost to make? And that year they made 74. Then I did it for automobiles and machine tools. That's a manufacturing curve, and it's cost per pound. I just need to know the weight of something, the cost, and how many you make, and then I can predict prices. So the first thing you see is you never make anything that's less than $10 per pound. That's what everything's made at, the cheapest things. Now, this doesn't work for pills, pharma, because you'll invest any amount of money to live forever, because you invest in hope. It doesn't work for IT. IT is low capex. You put a few kids in a dorm room at Harvard and they come up with Facebook or Microsoft, okay? But that's low capex. Energy's high capex, and there's no hope. You don't put the plug in the wall hoping energy's going to come out of it. So that's why nobody likes investing in energy, because you don't have hope and it's not low capex, it's high capex. Now, this curve works for everything. This is no joke. I called it, McDonald's has a chief technology officer. And I called the chief technology officer, I'm not sure what all the technology is in a hamburger, but they have a CTO, and he told me a hamburger costs $10 per pound. You take the weight of the burger, the tomato, the lettuce, the cheese, and the bun, comes out to $10 per pound. Now, that's interesting because what we do in the developed world is we build one big thing. It weighs a lot, and when you multiply by $10, that ends up costing a few $billion. And then you have to put everything else in there. There's a huge infrastructure around it. You have to put in the mining and all the transportation and the grid. So when you're finished with this, and I'm doing calculations with people at University of Chicago in economics, just the fossil fuel-based infrastructure in the US is coming out to around $16 trillion, meaning we've invested $16 trillion and it's all paid off, completely paid off. So that's why we're stuck using it. So that's how we do it. We build one big thing, it costs a lot, and it's already paid off. That's not how McDonald's works. Think about how McDonald's would work if they built their business model the way we do energy. Do you ever think about it? What McDonald's would do is they would make one huge hamburger, you would all drive to it, take a bite out of it, and then go back home. That's how it would work. So a few years ago, we started wondering, could we make the McDonald's hamburger of energy? Now, what is available to everybody, whether you're poor or rich? There's one energy supply that follows you around, and that's the sun, so that's a good reason to use it. And then leaves, what they do is a leaf will take sunlight, and the first thing it does when you put water on a plant is it splits the water. It takes the bonds of water and rearranges the bonds, and it makes hydrogen and oxygen. And those are high-energy fuels. But the leaf goes one step further. Because hydrogen's a gas, at night, it takes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and then it makes a biomass. And so a few years ago, we made this thing called the artificial leaf, where we could take silicon, and we made special catalysts that could then, once they got energized with the sun, they could then split water to hydrogen and oxygen. And that movie's supposed to run, but it's not working. So you can go and look on Sundance Film Festival. Sundance Film Festival made a big movie on artificial leaf. That thing looks like a hamburger. I told you I was going to give you a hamburger. The silicon, sunlight hits silicon, that's the burger, and then the catalysts are on the top and the bottom. So now I can hand out this artificial leaf to all these people all over the world. They can drop it in a glass of water, have sunlight hit it, and they get hydrogen and oxygen. But what will you do with hydrogen? This is what you would do with hydrogen in our society. You would just blow up balloons, because we don't have a hydrogen infrastructure. So 2 years ago, we took a bacterium and we put genes in it, the genetic code to make the bacterium breathe in hydrogen. It breathes, and then these bacteria just grow on hydrogen. So their only food is hydrogen from solar water splitting, from the artificial leaf. But you can do other things. We also put genes in them to breathe in carbon dioxide, and then they made liquid fuel. And that's called the Bionic Leaf, and those things make biomass and liquid fuel at 10 times the efficiency of natural photosynthesis. So we beat out natural photosynthesis by a factor of 10. These bacteria, literally, you just put them in water, they take hydrogen from the artificial leaf, they breathe in CO2, and they excrete liquid fuel that you can collect. There's one other thing, what's nice about this is we don't compete with crops. You can do this in the desert, the bacteria are in a vase. There's one other thing you can also think about that's in the air, and that's nitrogen. So last year we took a bacteria that took hydrogen from water splitting. It breathes in nitrogen, and it makes fertilizer, ammonia. And just a few months ago, you can take those bacteria, put them in the ground, and you can guess which plants have the bacteria and which don't. So those bacteria are taking nitrogen, hydrogen from the artificial leaf, and then what they do is they grow, crops grow at, in this case, I have big radishes, big radishes, 300% dry weight. So that, I think, is going to be the future for the world. If you think about it, our only starting materials are sunlight, air, and water. I didn't tell you, you don't have to have clean water. Our catalysts work out of urine. So as long as you have any water source, sunlight, and air, and you have those two inventions, you can make fuel, and you can give the poor food, and I don't need your big infrastructure, because they don't have the money to pay trillions of dollars for it. And that's what I see as the future of our global planet. And the poor will end up taking care of you because you're going to get jealous of them and then want to live like them. So thank you.